Hello everyone, welcome to week 3 of the DDI webinar series. Before we get started, I just wanted to hit a few of the housekeeping items here. As you can see on the screen, there is a link to the DDI webinar archives page. I know most of you have accessed that page. If you haven't, please do. It has links to all of the materials for each week, as well as archived videos of each webinar. If you scroll down through the page, you'll see it's divided up by week. If you have any questions at any time, of course, you can email us at ddi@wayne.edu. I think that's it for now. We're going to get started. Elizabeth Jenks is going to introduce our presenters for the day. And again, if you have any questions during or after the webinar, please email us at ddi@wayne.edu.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 3. Today is March 20th, the first day of spring. I know we're all very much looking forward to the warmer weather after the brutal winter we survived. Today we have a special guest, and before we get started, I'd just like to take care of a few items. I'd like to say, first of all, to those of you that turned in the homework assignment, which we had almost 50 people do from last week, they were excellent. I really enjoyed reading them, and I really appreciate the quality of the work you turned in and how thoughtful the answers were. And today, Michelle's going to have a very similar assignment that she designed, and you're going to have an opportunity to turn that in again by Tuesday at 5 p.m. And I'd like you to send that, as you did last week, to that ddi@wayne.edu, which Michael just gave that address a few minutes ago. If you send that in there, then we'll log it all in, make sure you get credit for it each week, especially those of you who are getting the continuing education credits. Before we start, I'd like to talk a moment about next week. We're going to be doing inclusive education next week. We'll have a special guest as well. Her name is Jennifer Greening. Her area of expertise in her personal life and professionally is inclusive education for children with developmental disabilities. She has a book, and you can obtain her book, which is Opening Doors, Opening Lives. It's at Jennifer, JENNIFER, GREEN as in Nancy, ING, books.com. If you want to purchase her book in advance, it's around $12, and it will help you as you proceed through her presentation next week. But most importantly, it's a really nice tool just to have for those of you that are in education or working with children. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Michelle Driscoll. Michelle has worked at the ARC of Northwest Wayne County for over 15 years. She is currently the Advocacy and Community Resource Director. She has 30 years of experience working with people with disabilities, providing advocacy and support services in education, transition planning, employment, housing, Social Security and Medicaid, mental health services, person-centered planning, self-determination, and legal decision-making options. Michelle is a certified independent person-centered planning facilitator. She conducts trainings across Wayne County to help individuals and their families plan for their future and ensure that appropriate supports and services are in place as needed. Michelle has collaborated with over 11 school districts and other community agencies across Wayne County to ensure effective transition planning is occurring through the individualized education planning team process. She serves as an alternate representative for the ARC Michigan on the Special Education Advisory Committee, which advises the State Board of Education on special education and works in collaboration with the Office of Special Education. Michelle is also a member of the ARC Michigan Education Committee. So she is the perfect person to talk about today's topic, which is the tools to help you obtain a quality of life. Michelle, and Michelle's going to entertain questions, I believe, throughout her presentation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome today. Thank you for participating. I want to tell you a little bit about the ARC of Northwest Wayne County. The ARC is committed to building inclusive communities through advocacy, support, and information. The ARC Information Assistance and Advocacy helps people with developmental disabilities achieve quality, inclusive education, achieve self-determined adult lives, achieve real jobs, employment, and achieve quality, life quality with needed services and supports. The ARC of Northwest Wayne County serves the communities of Redford, Livonia, Plymouth, Canton, Northville, and Garden City. And there's our direct contact information. We are a local chapter of the ARC Michigan. So we help people connect to any resources that they need in the community for access to mental health services, job support, housing support, assistance in getting community living supports, staffing services, and really anything that people need to help them live better lives. The learning objectives for today, at the end of this webinar, participants will be able to explain how to access mental health services. We'll understand the person-centered planning process in order to develop an effective plan of service. We'll be able to summarize the 5 principles and 3 tools of self-determination, and we'll know where to go for additional information. So to start, how to access services. You begin the process of accessing mental health services by contacting the local mental health agency or visiting the Michigan Department of Community Health website, and that's listed there. And this is the first step for individuals to be determined as having a disability and whether they would be eligible for the mental health services. After that initial contact, which is in Wayne County, is usually about a 30 to 40 minute phone interview, then an intake appointment will be scheduled to gather information and determine more specific eligibility for mental health services. Some of the information at that intake appointment that you may be asked to bring would be an ID card, driver's license or Michigan ID card, health insurance cards, social security card, birth certificate, list of medications, a durable power of attorney or guardianship papers, and any information you have from Social Security. The process itself to enroll for mental health services can take up to 30 days. After a person is determined to be eligible, a support coordinator, which is the contact person at that mental health agency, will be assigned, and a pre-plan and person-centered planning meetings will be scheduled. Mental health services are paid for by Medicaid. People without Medicaid can receive some services in a limited capacity. And to apply directly for Medicaid, you would contact your local Department of Human Services. And I'd like to ask if there are any questions right now related to accessing mental health services. Okay, there are no questions at this time, so we will continue on. Okay, we are going to talk about person-centered, and this is really the key to the mental health services and having everything documented and really putting everything in writing and gathering all of the input and information from the people that support an individual in their life. So this is a real key piece, is this person-centered planning process. The process is for planning and supporting the person that receives services, and person-centered planning builds upon the person's capacity to engage in activities that promote community life. It honors the person's preferences and choices and abilities, and it involves families, friends, and professionals as the person desires or requires. So it's a process that's based on looking at strengths and attributes. It is not deficit driven. It is focusing on what the person wants in their life and what their preferences are, what their interests are, and all of those positive things, and gathering everybody together as they would like to be part of that process. It also talks about challenges and barriers and health and safety and all of those important things that the person will want documented, that will then lead to the plan of services that will talk about what supports and services the individual needs to achieve their quality of life and live their life the way that they would like. Person-centered planning is part of the law. It's part of the mental health code, and you can go to the Minnesota.gov website and view those documents. It's powerful because the plan drives the services from the mental health system, and those services have legal appeal rights. So it's very, very important that everything be documented and that the interests and preferences of the individual, their concerns, what's important to them, that everything is documented in that plan. Independent facilitation. An independent facilitator leads an individual support circle through the person-centered planning process. The option of having an independent facilitator should be discussed during the pre-planning meeting. That pre-planning meeting will be the meeting that the individual will have with whoever they choose to invite, but with that support coordinator, with that case manager, who will be, and you will be deciding the date of the meeting, the location of the meeting, who the individual wants to invite, topics that the person wants to talk about, topics that might be off limits that the person doesn't want to talk about. And this is the point where they would ask to have an independent facilitator, somebody outside of the mental health system who can actually lead that person-centered planning process. If the individual is not familiar with that, the support coordinator through the mental health agency should be sharing that information about the role of an independent facilitator and how it may be useful to that person in their planning process. People have a choice of who they'd like to facilitate their meeting, and the independent facilitator will ensure that that process runs smoothly and that all ideas and concerns are documented. Are there any questions at this time? The question is who will pay for an independent facilitator, and that is paid for through the mental health system. The individual themselves would not have to pay for that service. It is provided and paid for by Medicaid dollars through the mental health system.
Thank you.
So the next part, as you're going through this person-centered planning process and people are brainstorming and documenting ideas and talking about all the important things in the individual's life, talking about what their goals are, what they're interested in. It could be related to community, it could be related to school, it could be related to friendships or housing or a job, employment. As you're documenting all of that, after all of those things are listed, including health and safety and any barriers or challenges that that person might be facing to reach their goals, what comes out of all of this is called an individual plan of service. And the individual plan of service is developed as part of this person-centered planning process. It focuses on, of course, the goals and what the person wants in their life. Focuses also on health and safety, natural supports, which are the people in the individual's life who are not paid but are actively involved with the individual, providing them support in whatever way they can help. And then it also talks about supports from the mental health system, which could be state plan or waiver services, and those are services that the state will offer to promote community inclusion and participation, productivity, and independence. It could be services such as providing assistive technology, community living supports, which are staff, environmental modifications, fiscal intermediary services, which we will touch on later, employment services, housing services, respite services, just a whole variety of services. And if you want more information, you can go to the Michigan Department of Community Health website and look at the Medicaid Provider Manual, and that lists all of the Medicaid covered services. The individual plan of service should outline what needs to happen in order to help an individual reach his or her goals. It includes what actions are to be taken and who is responsible for taking those actions. It outlines what services the mental health agency will provide, and that's the type of service, the amount of service, and the duration of the service. It needs to be very specific. It can be changed at any time through this process, through the person-centered planning process or a person-centered planning review, but it needs to be documented in very specific terms. What service does the individual need? How much do they need? And how long will they need the service in order to reach their goals? It is not sufficient for the family, the individual and the family, to be responsible for providing all of the services. It really should be a coordinated effort with assistance from the mental health agency and the service providers, along with the family and the individual, to whatever extent that they can provide assistance. The next section is about self-determination, and it really encompasses this entire presentation. We're talking about individuals and their lives and how people get what they want to reach their own goals, their preferences, and live the life that they want. So self-determination is not a program. It is a way to gain control over services and supports through the mental health system. So it's a way that we live our lives. We all make choices about where we live and where we work and who we want to be friends with and what we do for fun. And it's the same for somebody who gets services through the mental health system. They should have control over what kind of assistance they need, how they can reach their goals of community participation, and how to be productive, and how to reach their meaningful goals for their lives. So self-determination has the following principles, and we'll talk about each one of these individually: freedom, support, authority, responsibility, and confirmation. So freedom means exactly what it says. It means to plan a meaningful life with help from trusted people, family, friends, and advocates, and people who will support the individual to get the help that they need and ensure that services are in place so that the individual can reach their life goals. And it is with involvement from anybody who the individual chooses and asks for assistance. Support is identified in the plan based on the need to achieve the goals, as we mentioned earlier, of community inclusion and participation, independence, and or productivity. And that support is offered with the assistance of a coordinator, usually they're called a support coordinator, who works for the individual, and that is through the mental health system. So the individuals can have whatever support they need. It should be identified in that plan of service, and they can identify, you know, who it is that they want to be helping them in their life. Authority. The individual has the authority over a targeted amount of funds known as their individual support budget. The budget is developed together with the individual and the support coordinator through the mental health system, family, and others involved with the individual who know what the individual's needs are. And the budget is developed and sent through a process so that everything is in that individual budget that that person desires or requires, and it does not include services that the person would not find necessary to them. Responsibility. The individual's responsibility, along with help, for managing that Medicaid budget, and it's with help from a fiscal intermediary, and we will talk more about that. The responsibility for spending those Medicaid dollars wisely and for staying within the budget, not overspending, utilizing only the services that are needed, and if additional services are needed, that there is a process to go through that the person can request that review and ask for additional dollars into their budget. And confirmation. The mental health system confirms that the person has a right to control decisions about their life, and the mental health system confirms that the individual and their families have a right to be part of the decisions that affect their lives. And it's really putting control into the hands of the individual and those who support that individual to help them understand what services they need, how to get the services they need, how those services are paid for, and to be responsible for understanding that individual budget and how it all fits together for that person to ultimately reach their life goals. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, there was a question again about self-determination, and just to reiterate that self-determination, that terminology, is really a philosophy. It's not a program. It's a philosophy to help people think about having control over their own lives and requesting the services that they need for their own lives, and really understanding that process about how an individual would go about requesting services and identifying what they need and how they actually can get dollars attached to the services and supports they need to help them in their lives. So it's a philosophy, it's a way to think about providing services, as opposed to the old system of service that everybody was assigned clinicians and people to support them, whether they actually needed the services or not. Everybody had those services in their plans. And self-determination really focuses on what people need individually, what they for themselves need, and how to use those Medicaid dollars frugally to get their individual services to reach their goals. So self-determination tools, the independent support, an individual budget, and fiscal intermediary services. These are the three main tools that are used when you're looking at self-determination, helping people live self-determined lives. So independent support. Is there a circle of support to help someone live their life? And these are questions to think about and ways to be able to help people really wrap their heads around that philosophy of self-determination. Does the plan help someone develop relationships or maintain existing relationships? Does the plan help someone to be part of their community? Does the plan help the person to be more in charge of their life? Does the plan help the person to pursue their dreams and a good quality of life? There are many, many other questions that people can think about as they're looking at how to live self-determined lives, but really focusing on helping people be as independent as possible, helping them be productive, and helping them have access to their communities and really be participating in their communities, not just an outsider wandering about, but really actively participating in their communities and contributing. The next tool is the individual budget. Does the plan help the person control their budget? The individual budget takes into consideration entitlements, any benefits that the individual would receive, their Social Security funds, food stamps, their earnings. If they work, their earnings are added into those budgets. Home help money, if they receive dollars for somebody to provide in-home personal care, those dollars are added into the budget to be looked at and used towards additional independent support later on. In-kind contributions, any kind of other help that family or friends are offering, and then of course the mental health services. And all of those things are added into the budget and taken into consideration. And then the fiscal intermediary. Fiscal intermediary is an independent agent that receives the mental health funds and makes payments for services and supports. Individuals themselves cannot receive Medicaid dollars to pay for services. So those dollars come through the individual budget to a fiscal intermediary. That fiscal intermediary service handles all of the accounting, maintains accountability over the funds, acts as employer agent if someone hires their own staff, which means that the fiscal intermediary would do the criminal background check, would assure compliance with tax filings and labor laws, and shields the person from liabilities as the employer. This is a service that the individual can take advantage of and have the fiscal intermediary handle all of these little details so that they could be able to hire their own staff and make the choice about who they want to work for them. So the fiscal intermediary assists the individual by handling all of these services so that the individual can hire their own staff and really make those choices on their own with whatever support and help that they need. Are there any questions about the tools, self-determination tools?
Question, Michelle. What is the approximate cost to have a fiscal intermediary? You all do the DR.
The cost varies. It is very low. I think it's around $70 or $75. So it is really very inexpensive, and it is a great service for people to utilize.
Does it get a lot?
So for that, and it would vary across counties. As an independent facilitator, our organization, that is kind of a general fee that we've been allowed to charge. But for that dollar amount, the individual will have a pre-planned meeting with the independent facilitator and may have other conversations before the meeting to talk with the independent facilitator about how they want that process to go. The independent facilitator will actually run the meeting, will take notes, and I use big flip chart post-it sheets on the wall, so you're writing and documenting, and then after that meeting is over, the independent facilitator is responsible for typing up all of those notes and making sure that everything has been documented.
Thank you.
So it is not a costly service. An individual who has, I'm sorry, the question is asked is, do you have to have a fiscal intermediary? And the answer is yes. Medicaid dollars cannot be, they cannot come to an individual and then be paid out to their staff or to their transportation service or to their vocational provider. Those Medicaid dollars have to come through the fiscal intermediary. In Wayne County, there are 4. I am not sure about other counties, but I would hope that there would be a choice of who people can choose to provide this service. But yes, there has to be a fiscal intermediary to manage those Medicaid dollars. It's required by the state and by the county. And that is all the questions for right now. And just a reminder about choosing your words wisely. It's important to use person-first language. Put the person before their disability. We talk about a person who has a disability, not a disabled person. Rosa's Law was signed into effect on October 5th, 2010, mandating that health, education, and labor policies now use intellectual disability instead of mental retardation. So we are really, in our country, making strides forward to really talk about people who have disabilities with more respect and dignity, and we're making a good move in that direction. So pulling it all together, a person accesses mental health services through the local mental health agency. A plan of service is developed based on a person-centered planning process which identifies needed supports and services. And a plan of service confirms the principles of self-determination. And just some information about who to contact if you need help. The ARC Michigan and the Michigan Department of Community Health are excellent resources. And I'd just like to ask for any additional questions. There's a question about whether there is a recent law in Michigan that extends the intent of Rosa's Law to Michigan policies and not just federal language. I am not sure about that. I know that we are, of course, required to follow federal regulations. And if you would like additional information, my contact information is at the beginning of the presentation. I'd be happy to follow up on that for you. Any other questions? And that is all the questions for right now. One more slide. And so the last slide is the assignment for week 3. In 350 words or less, give examples of how you apply each principle of self-determination in your own life. And again, you are looking at freedom, support, authority, responsibility, and confirmation. And you can email your assignment to Anita at ddi@wsu.edu. Oh, I'm sorry, the email is incorrect. It's Anita at DDI. Oh, I'm sorry, DDI@wayne.edu is the correct email. DDI@wayne.edu. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much for sharing the tools of how we obtain quality of life for individuals with disabilities. And thank you today for all your participation. Michael has told me to remind everyone, information will be archived on our website. Please send the assignments again to that email ddi@wayne.edu.
Hold on 1 second. We are, but I want to make sure that they can hear you.
Hold on, we're just checking our technical. All right, I think we're okay. So, a couple of last words about the webinar series, okay? We need the assignments by Tuesday at 5 p.m. We want to remind you that all materials are copywritten. Michelle and a colleague wrote the presentation today, and it's copywritten to the ARC of Northwest Wayne County. So you're always free to use the materials. That's what they're there for. However, please credit Michelle and Courtney and the ARC of Northwest Wayne County when you use any of the materials. In anything from this day forward, we would be appreciative of that. The same holds true for DDI at Wayne State University. Also, there will be references for the presentations at week 9. We will make sure we send you references. I've had people inquire about how they could get additional information about various topics that are being presented in the series. So we'll make sure we get you a list of references at the conclusion of the webinar, which will be on week 9, which I believe is May 1st. So I want to thank everyone, and again, just get your pre's, your post-tests, your assignments in by Tuesday at 5, so you can make sure you secure your continuing education credits. The webinar will be archived. You can visit our website at ddi.wayne.edu, and you can access the archived website for those of you that could not log in at live time today, or if you want to just re-listen and revisit some of the concepts as you do your assignment. Again, thank you. Next week, tune in. We'll have Jennifer Greening. She's going to talk about inclusive classrooms. And if you'd like to purchase her book, we gave out that information earlier. And that's it for me today. Thank you and have a good day. And thank you to our guest, Michelle, today.